Good evening and welcome. My name is David Otter, and for years I have been collecting Spectravideo gear. So I am about to give you a little bit of a brief intro into about Spectravideo and its history. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thanks. Spectravideo. In the early 80s, people had fancy hair, brightly coloured clothes, and were listening to music from Duran Duran, the Eurythmics, and Michael Jackson. Soap operas like Dynasty and Dallas ruled the TV world. Back then, computers were the new kids on the block, and everybody whom was anyone wanted one at home, or dreamed of having one someday. This fantastically new and seemingly space-age technology was the future to come. You needed to be prepared for it, or so we were told from everywhere back then. Computers were advertised in that they could do the most fantastic things, and then, even with TV shows, showed that with a computer, anything could be possible. You could organise your home economy, keep track of your recipes, and even learn advanced programming, and even more. The intentions were probably meant for good and the betterment of man, but for most of us young kids back then, it was playing video games and to kill those pesky aliens that were attacking the planet. Then there were a lot of different computers to choose from back in those days, of the likes of Commodore, Atari, Sinclair, Oric, Apple, Dragon, and of course the Spectravideo. So now on with a bit of a brief history on the Spectravideo. Spectravideo was originally known as SpectraVision. This was founded in 1981 by Harry Fox and Oscar Jules, two Swiss clock watchmakers who had moved to North America in the 1950s. SpectraVision was back then a distributor of computer games, but was not a software house. They had several contracts with external developers writing games. Their main products were gaming cartridges for the Atari 2600, ColecoVision, and Commodore VIC-20 in the early days. SpectraVision also made the world's first ergonomic joystick called the QuickShot, which we all remember. It was developed by Harry Fox and Peter Law and patented in the US in 1982. QuickShot was a huge success all over the world, and it was followed by a number of variations, all using the QuickShot brand name. In late 1982, the company was renamed to Spectravideo due to a naming conflict in the USA. On Command's hotel TV system called SpectraVision. After the huge success with the QuickShot joystick, now known Spectravideo decided to take the next step, so in January 1983 at the Winter CES show, which stood for the Computer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, they launched their Spectravideo range. In the show, Spectravideo launched two units to the public back then, the Spectravideo Compumate and the SP318 Mark I computer. The SP318 really stood out from the crowd with its removable red joystick in the keyboard. The Compumate was a hardware add-on for the Atari 2600 game console, turning it into a real computer. It provided a soft-touch keyboard, cassette recorder connection, and Microsoft Basic in ROM. Although a computer, it was really very basic compared to the Spectravideo 318. Spectravideo's first real computer, the Spectravideo 318, was all their own design, based on a Z80 processor, 16K of internal RAM, a TMS 9918A graphics chip, and the AY38910 sound chip, and using the Microsoft provided basic interpreter called the SV Extended Basic. Part of SpectraVideo's slow take-up was Microsoft's fault, as it was late in delivering the basic interpreter to SpectraVideo, and causing SpectraVideo to miss the important holiday sales period and compete with the other players in the market when it launched. The SV318 was soon followed by the SV328, a redesign and more powerful version with 64K of RAM, full stroke keyboard and numeric pad, and replacing the joystick in the keyboard. The 328 also had CPM support that was licensed from Digital Research. SpectraVideo showed working models of its 328 at the 1983 Summer CES show in Chicago when it launched. The SV318-328 was a combined effort of SpectraVideo in the US management and marketing, Bondwell in Hong Kong manufacturing, and ASCII Corporation in Japan for system software. ASCII also was the Microsoft representative in Japan at the time. ASCII's president, also known as Kei Nishi, saw the potential in SpectraVideo computer systems. He wanted to make a world standard for home computers out of the SpectraVideo 328 design that he would later on call the MSX standard. SpectraVideo agreed to this, and ASCII started to make small changes to the design towards MSX. In 1984, SpectraVideo licensed this hardware technology to Microsoft. This also gave SpectraVideo a much needed financial boost, as they were in rather severe financial trouble with the launch of their products being late. This collaboration of the MSX system outline was creating a world standard for computers. There are two explanations for the letters in MSX: machines with software exchangeability, and the other, Microsoft Software Exchange. The idea behind MSX was that MSX would use a common hardware design, followed by the same software and peripherals to be used on machines from different manufacturers, so therefore truly universal. Nishi also teamed up with his friend back then, Mr. Bill Gates from Microsoft. In the beginning, Bill Gates was so enthusiastic about the way MSX would work and how it could work on multiple systems with hardware of the same. But as time went by, Bill Gates realized that MSX standard was starting to be a real threat to the PC market, and as much his MS-DOS business that Microsoft had at that time with IBM. You can check out the interview with Bill Gates and Nishi on YouTube. Still, it is not of very good quality, I'm sorry. The SpectraVideo 328 was the prototype for the MSX design in the beginning, but there were some small differences making the 318-328 incompatible with MSX. Some of the differences were the BIOS, the I/O ports, and the disk format. But this didn't stop SpectraVideo in the early days from using the MSX story in their marketing. Early on with the 318 and 328, some of the marketing material for the 318-328 is more or less telling the customer that the computers will run MSX software. Here's a quote from the 1983 SVI 318 Flyer. When you buy an SVI 318, you will not only be able to use all of SpectraVideo's own software and hardware, you will be able to take advantage of all the remarkable new equipment that will be coming from other MSX participants. Well, it doesn't say MSX software compatible, but it's close enough. The Flyer also had the MSX logo next to the computer. The same was true about the early 328 Flyer. So as you can see, many customers were confused by this type of advertising back then, which didn't bode well for SpectraVideo. In 1984, the company was renamed SpectraVideo International, or SVI, from SpectraVideo, and was now represented in all of Europe, the USA, Australia, South Africa and Israel, as well as most of the world. The company also had a lot of add-on components to their lineup, with super expanders for expanding the RAM, RS-232, modems, 80-column cards and the like. They even made a ColecoVision add-on that plugged into the back of your 328 so you could play the ColecoVision cartridges. They later on also made an MSX add-on, but this was not very good. This also led to a change of all model names using SVI in front of the model numbers from the early SV. Rumours are saying the model numbers were picked based on their goodness in Chinese numerology. That is why many of them contain the number 8. SpectraVideo also revised the 318 and 328 hardware. Along with the changes was a new and exciting ULA chip instead of several TTLs, reducing the motherboard footprint and cost for SpectraVideo. They also put the TV modulator inside the machine and not as the old plug-in boxes they used to be. The revised machines were called the SVI 318 Mark II and 328 Mark II. In late 1984, SpectraVideo International launched their first fully MSX compatible computer, the SpectraVideo SVI 728, and by this time SpectraVideo had sold over 25,000 computers worldwide, along with an array of their add-ons and software to go with them. SpectraVideo had fairly good success in Europe and other parts of the world, but their US sales were still poor. Some of it was blamed on bad distribution and limited visibility they were given in the stores due to the late release. Their financial situation wasn't in good shape either. In 1985, SpectraVideo closed its US operations. This was a decision taken by Bondwell Holdings, SpectraVideo's manufacturing partner, and by this time the major shareholder. Bondwell then later moved everything to its home base in Hong Kong. The next product to emerge from the SpectraVideo stables was the impressive SVI 738 brand name Express. This PC was a breath of fresh air in the industry at its launch time. An MSX compatible computer with integrated floppy drive, a retractable carry handle, printer port, 80-column support, and truly a portable computer, albeit without a screen. It was sold as an MSX1, but internally it had a lot of the MSX2 components already installed, as well as on the board the options to put a clock and battery backup with extended RAM that a lot of people did later on. Most of the users back then knew the Express as a version 1.5 because it could be so easily upgraded to MSX2. This was later followed by some PCs and a PC MSX hybrid because MSX was so big in Asia. These were the PC lines of the SVI 808, the SVI 818 and the SVI 838, also called the Express 16. The Express 16 was a PC with an MSX2 module that was inside internally. In the dual system, the MSX was meant to be MSX2, but not all software would run on it, as it was not 100% MSX compatible because of the PC internals inside the case as well. They had to share resources. SpectraVideo left the MSX camp in 1986 and concentrated on the PC computers. The SpectraVideo SVI 256 and the SVI 640 FH and FF PC computers. These were born into the market of the PC clone. For a brief moment in that time, SpectraVideo had claimed a monopoly on MS-DOS computers in the US market. The stock went up and the insiders sold out. But by this time, the writing was on the wall, as the major shareholder, Bondwell, also had their own Bondwell branded PCs they started flooding the market with. The Z80 based Bondwell 2 and the Intel 8088 based Bondwell 8 being the two major players at that time. After a short while, Bondwell abandoned the SpectraVideo name and moved on to use the Bondwell brand name for all of its computers from then on. SpectraVideo brand was later sold to a UK based company, and the Quickshot brand was sold to Tomy International. In present day times, the SpectraVideo name was used by the UK based company called SpectraVideo plc, formerly known as Ash and Newman. Ash and Newman was founded in 1977 and took over the SpectraVideo name from Bondwell in 1988. Back then, Ash and Newman sold a range of Logic 3 branded products for computers, game consoles and iPods, all of their own design and making. After some time in 2013, the computer company entered administration, and after then, with a bad licensing deal with Ferrari and Apple that proved to be a failure. 2016, the company was dissolved and the name SpectraVideo ended. And so there we have it. There's my presentation on the history of SpectraVideo. There is a lot more that I could go on about, but this is already about 20 minutes and I think you've had enough by now. Thanks for listening to me, guys. Sorry for the odd hiccup in there, but you know how it is when you try to read off a script. SpectraVideo did a lot of other things. They also made a lot of different types of hardware for a lot of other PCs, not just the SpectraVideo. There were robot arms, there were tablets for drawing, there were so many different things they made, and they really did make a lot of really good gear back in their day. The scene in New Zealand and Europe as well as Australia was mainly user-based for software. Some of their titles weren't that great and looked like they were the same thing, just respun. Some of their titles were awesome, and even by today's standard for the hardware they ran on, was truly amazing. If you get a chance, grab an emulator offline, and if you want to have the real retro experience, get yourself a SpectraVideo 328 and have a play, and have a look at it and see what you think. Some of the stuff is really good, especially the binary programs if you can get them. Well, that's enough from me tonight, guys. I think you're getting a bit sick of my voice. So, thank you again for listening to me, and it's been a privilege to give you a wee bit of the history on SpectraVideo. I will be here to take some questions and answers. I am not an expert, I just have one of the biggest collections of SpectraVideo gear, I think. Thanks, and have a good evening.
Wow, thank you so much, David. That was awesome. I personally didn't know most of that. People do want to think about questions you want to ask, but I've got one first. David, what makes you so into SpectraVideo?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What was that, Kirk?
What makes you so enthusiastic about SpectraVideo?
I suppose it goes back to the early days when I was in my teens, and my brother and I started off with a ZX81 with the 1K RAM, and when you turn it off, you had to retype everything back in again. And it all started from then. And the next machine we got after that was a SpectraVideo 328, and joined up to a club. And my brother went on to Amigas and that, but I sort of always stuck with the SpectraVideo. I actually liked the way the games were on it for what it was. And back then I didn't have a lot of money either, so that was the main reason why.
Do you find it hard to find the SpectraVideo hardware in New Zealand? I remember in the days I used to have a MSX 728, and then you got the joysticks, of course, that everyone knows about. But what about all the other hardware?
It can be hard to find. There is stuff stashed all over the place, and it's a matter of finding those nice little niches where you can get it. Like, I mean, the last lot I got, I'm still going through, was what I picked up from Auckland. And I mean, I brought a lot of gear back down for guys as well, of other stuff, but that my car's a Honda CRV. I removed the rear seats out of it for that trip, and half of the car was full of SpectraVideo gear. And I mean, and out of that, there was stuff I've never seen. Like, there was two SpectraVideo 818s in there. There was a 738, a 728. There's a pile of 328s and 318 Mark 1s and Mark 2s. There was just so much stuff, and I thought I would never see that amount of stuff in one place.
I just wanted to say thank you for showing your progress with your power supplies and everything, rebuilding them. I helped to put all the pile together in Auckland for you, at the big Falco pick. It's getting me organised to do my 328 and get her going properly. And
sorry, you're breaking up.
Oh, am I?
No,
I was just saying it's making me want to finish getting my 328 going, and so it's been interesting watching your rebuilds.
Yeah, I'm actually quite lucky. Two of the 328s were in pretty good nick, and I mean, I've done some of the tape decks of new belts and stuff in them, and two of the 328s have been off over to Aussie. So they were two of the 328 Mark IIs, and it was a couple of brothers that had them when they were kids, and saw them on the channel on Facebook, and contacted me and says, "Well, any chance you could send a couple over here?" So yeah, we sorted out a price, and two of them, after being certified and checked and running, and they were sent over to Aussie last week.
Aussies are really after our stuff at the moment, I noticed.
Yeah, I think it's because we were this sort of mentality where we hoard everything. And then, because they were to the point of, it's to throw it in the bin, you know. And that's what a lot of the Aussies did with their stuff. They trashed a lot of it, because it's too old. But the New Zealander with the number 8 fence wire mentality would sit down and hang on to it because he could do something with it later on. And even not just computers, the gear, but my dad's in Aussie now, but he says even in Asia, like the real old turntables and tape decks and stuff, the Asians are actually trying to buy it all back because it's part of their history they don't have. So, I mean, and that's the thing, they look for the smaller countries that stuff went to, that people hung on to. Yeah, at some stage I'll do another presentation for Kirk, but I'll do you on my collection itself, on the gear I actually have. So yeah, I mean, I've got all sorts of stuff in it. So I'm into science fiction as well. I mean, you wouldn't believe half the science fiction gear I've got. I've got 3 by 3 meter sheds full of shit. As well as the attic. As well as the attic in the house. And we got a high peak tile roof house. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
I don't feel so guilty.
Yeah, no. I mean, it all was from when I had my business. I had a set of 3 shops, and in the end of getting sick of having tenants that wouldn't pay, I ended up taking the whole 3 of them over, and that's where it had to come from. So so one was just for collecting stuff, you know. Yes. But
hey David, what was the you mentioned about the ColecoVision add-on? What was the connection between SpectraVideo and ColecoVision, and why that particular console was supported?
I think they went down the Coleco line. The internals on the SpectraVideo and in the Coleco are very, very similar. It's just the ROMs and I think the sound chip or something. There's a couple of things that were a little bit different. So this cartridge just plugged into the expansion port on the back. You can plug the Coleco joysticks into the side of it, put their cartridges in and just play it like it was playing a normal game. And it would play through the video and the sound on the PC itself. I think it was also because they did do a lot of the ColecoVision stuff for them as well, and the cartridges and that when they were releasing them. Because they did a hell of a lot of stuff for the Atari 2600s. You'll see a lot of SpectraVideo titles that, you know, were labeled titles out there for them. And I think that was part of it. And also because it was so common in hardware, they could make this, and then people didn't have to go and buy a game console and then go a PC. So they could actually get one, buy a thing, plug it in the back, yeah, best of both worlds.
Yeah, pretty cool. Cheers.
Probably cost the same as buying 2 separate ones, I guess.
I was about to say hardware architecture on the 318. Yeah, I'm not surprised they did the ColecoVision thing, because the Sega SC3000 is virtually identical other than RAM and ROM. So the 3000 can run a Coleco software as well with some modifications. So yeah, it seems like a natural extension. The 318 would have got the same treatment. Just it was first party, so Sega never wanted any of that.
David,
Yeah,
I've still got this, which I owe you.
What's that?
It's a SpectraVideo keyboard for the Atari.
Oh, right, yes.
Yes, so which is pretty strange.
That's the Compumate.
So it basically runs BASIC on the Atari 2600 with a real keyboard.
That's the one I had in my presentation. Yeah. Although it's a very basic version of BASIC. So yeah,
it's better than the Atari's version of it.
Yeah.
Have you tried using it?
But that was something they did in unison with.
You don't want
back then, I think, because they were doing a lot of cartridges.
Yeah, the keyboard is horrible to type on. So
yeah, they're a bit like the 318 early Mark 1s. They were that rubbery type membrane thing. They're not very
they're
nice.
a membrane keyboard, so you need to kind of press it deliberately to actually type anything in.
Yeah, I mean, and the Atari's video architecture is so weird. I guess they would have had to piggyback on top of that.
Well, it has the keyboard and then
I'm not sure we did the MSX card for an 838.
It's got the cartridge which plugs into the top of the Atari 2600, and then the keyboard kind of comes off that. And also, I think it also has a tape interface you can plug into it as well.
Yeah, it does. On the back of the keyboard, there's actually a place for a
Yep.
standard tape deck
Yep.
plug in, so you load the stuff in through it. Yes, a bit along the lines of the ZX81 when you could have the extension to put the tape deck into your ZX81 to save and load stuff out of. Yeah, I wouldn't know where you'd find an MSX2 card for an 838, Philip. I have no idea. As I was saying, I didn't really know that. Right, it was lucky when I was coming down from Auckland. Philip contacted me. He says, "Oh, my mate's got a couple of boxes up in Auckland. Can you bring them back when you come down from Auckland with your stash?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I think there should be room there." So I got this box in the car, and I was talking to a guy in Auckland, and he says, "Oh, you know what it is, don't you?" I says, "No, what?" He says, "Oh, it's an 838 Express 16. I says, "Oh, shit, I wonder if it'd go missing on the way back down." Because I never knew there was one. I knew a guy had one in Wellington, that a guy that used to be on our channel on Facebook that passed away a couple of years ago out Wanganui way. He got one. He bought one from Matty over in Europe that sells a lot of MSX stuff online. And I did some work for it when I had the buildings, the shops, because it had issues with the power supply and a few other bits and pieces. So, I mean, I did a bit of work on it. That didn't have the MSX card in it either. So I'm not too sure where you actually get the MSX2 cards to go in them. I know the 818 and the 828s, you could get a plug-in card for those, but they were even worse as in compatibility for the for the MSX side of things. Could try overseas. Try the SpectraVideo channel on Facebook and ask Matty if he knows of any MSX2 cards for 838.
Cool. David, that was an awesome presentation and great Q&A.